Hey everyone, so I wanted to make this quick video about social interaction and social anxiety because it's something that a lot of people have been talking to me about, and it seems that it's something that more and more of us are suffering through, particularly with the age of the internet and cell phones and social media and whatnot, which is kind of funny if you think about it, because really that level of constant connectivity should work against our social anxiety, but it doesn't, and it doesn't for a very specific reason, which we'll get into later. My first tip for dealing with social anxiety is exposure. Don't avoid social interactions just because they make you anxious. If you avoid something because it makes you uncomfortable or anxious, you're never going to surpass that limitation. You're never going to experience anything new, and you're never going to find out what's beyond that feeling of anxiety. It would be like if you went to a gym and you decided, okay, I'm going to get stronger. And you went up to a weight that you had never lifted before, and it was heavier than you were used to, and you went, wow, that weight makes me uncomfortable. I really don't think I can do it. If I do it, I might look terrible, so I'm just going to put it down and I'm never going to try it again, or any weight that resembles it. Well, you're never going to get stronger. That's not going to work for you. In fact, you're going to end up stagnating in the exact same physical condition that you're in. Whereas if you go over and you deal with the discomfort, you deal with your doubt, or better yet, you just stop paying attention to the thoughts that doubt you, or you stop paying attention to the reasons for yourself being anxious. And you just work on picking up the weight once, and then you do it once again, and then you do it once again. Well, each and every time you do it, it becomes more familiar and less of a source of anxiety. Each and every time you do it, you get stronger, and your confidence increases, which means that the next time you're going to jump into that experience with a lot less anxiety, with a lot less worry, and you're going to continue to get stronger each and every time. And then the next weight after that isn't going to be nearly as terrifying because you've already convinced yourself that you could conquer the last limitation that scared you. And social anxiety is exactly the same thing. If you are afraid of social interactions because you're afraid that you're going to say something offensive, or you're afraid that you're going to say something incorrectly, or you're afraid that what you say isn't going to be interesting to people, keep doing it. Keep jumping in there and having those conversations regardless of the outcome. Because each and every time you do, you are teaching yourself the very same lessons that you would in lifting up that weight. That you can do it. That there really isn't any conversation you can have that is so damaging that it's going to ruin your reputation and your life, unless, of course, you're not thinking at all and you're acting from a place which is ultimately selfish or self-involved or egotistical, in which case you can actually do quite a bit of damage. So in that case, be aware of what you're saying, not judgmental. But that's an entirely different problem. Most of the time, people who suffer from social anxiety are not egotistical, and they're not selfish or self-involved. They want to talk to people. They want to experience a wider variety of conversation and camaraderie and relationships, but they're afraid of their performance. They're afraid that they're not good enough, or they're afraid of what other people might think of them. So for that particular type of person, I would recommend that you have a little bit of faith in yourself, even if you don't feel like you have any reason to have faith. Jump in. Have that conversation, and when you walk away, even if you have made a mistake, even if you've offended somebody, even if you've said something that you thought was quite insightful and other people didn't get it, or you said something that you thought was quite funny and nobody laughed, it doesn't matter. The fact is, the next conversation you have is going to be built off the experience of the conversation you just had, which means that you are already improving, you're progressing, you're lifting the weight. And it may not feel like it right away, but if you keep doing it, eventually it's going to become a familiar experience. You're not going to feel that anxiety. And it's not through trying to cope with it. It's not through trying to develop a technique for dealing with it or thinking about it differently or trying to be positive. It's just through getting into the experience, dropping your assumptions of how you're doing in that experience and how other people are going to react to it. And just being in it, because the more you're in it, the better you get at it. It's like anything else. So don't listen to your anxiety. Your anxiety is simply based on your lack of familiarity and your lack of confidence. And the only real way to get familiarity and confidence is to get into the situation and let the chips fall where they may. You're going to be okay. It's not going to be that bad. Short of getting into a conversation with the deliberate intention of upsetting somebody or offending somebody or being more correct than somebody, you can have a lot of conversation and it could go one way or the other, but it's really not going to hurt you or damage your standing amongst your friends. Most people are more understanding than you think they are, and you know that because you are in fact more understanding than many people think you might be. Because remember, you're not the only one dealing with social anxiety. Just as you're afraid of what somebody might think of you, other people are afraid of what you might think of them. And they may never voice that, but it's true. So you show understanding all the time, often to people who you don't even know are feeling anxious. And they may say something and you just shrug it off. And that is often what happens in conversations with people. People are a lot more like you than you think they are. They suffer from the same fears and anxieties and limitations, and again, the same self-driven doubt and thought that we all go through. So remember that. Don't be so hard on yourself. Just jump in. And the experience of jumping in will be its own reward until one day you just jump into the conversation without a second thought, and it goes well, and you find yourself enjoying people. And as you enjoy people, you'll find how much you enjoy yourself. And so that's really it for social anxiety. Back to my point about the internet and social media. The reason that works against us in terms of social anxiety is simply because you are not actually interacting with people. Being on Facebook or on social media or Twitter allows you to cherry pick not just what you're sharing, but what you're saying. And of course, you can do that according to sitting down and scripting out what you're going to say and scripting out what your responses are going to be. And by scripting out, I mean giving it some serious thought, running it through some serious cerebral filters until what you're actually saying or commenting or the photos that you're sharing aren't real at all. They're deliberately invented or deliberately created for the point of displaying a particular persona that you mentally believe is going to be more appealing. And that's a very safe place to be. That would be the same as spending a day writing a letter perfectly so that you can get across a particular type of message. Whereas if you were in a conversation and running off the cuff, you would have to just speak and hope that it comes out correctly. So social media is great because it connects us to other people, but the problem is that layer of filter and that layer of safety, we cannot take that with us into the rest of our lives. And so the more we use social media as a form of communication, the less used to free-flowing communication we actually become. And that adds to our social anxiety when we go out into the world, which is why a lot of us spend more of our time texting, even when we're with people, than actually having a conversation, because it's safer. We can think it through. We don't have to look that person in the eye. We don't have to be aware of the facial expressions that we're making or our body language. We don't have to actually be present. It can all be carefully planned. So keep that in mind with social media. Try and get into more free-flowing conversations. Try and get into more conversations that you don't have the chance to plan for. And if you find yourself rehearsing conversations before they ever happen, even if they never happen, stop yourself and remind yourself that you don't really know what the response is going to be in that conversation. And embrace that uncertainty, embrace that not knowing, because you will find that you have more ability to adapt to a conversation than you really believe you do. And the more you do it, the more you'll find that out. So that's my tips for social anxiety and social interaction. If you have any questions, just let me know. And as always, I'll be happy to respond with a comment or another video. Thanks so much, guys. Have a good day.